The box was never meant to be touched. It sat at the back of a federal archive, pushed so far into the shadows that even the dust seemed to avoid it. No label, no case number, no warning sign, just a plain cardboard container resting among thousands of others that had already been forgotten. When the nationwide digitization project began, no one expected surprises. Old cases were old for a reason. They had been investigated, exhausted, and buried. Most contained nothing more than unanswered questions and dead ends. This box was different. Inside were photographs. Not the kind taken casually or officially posed. These were raw, unsettling images. Trees bending inward like they were watching, tire marks half swallowed by mud, a wristwatch lying face down in damp soil, its glass cracked, its hands frozen forever. Beneath the photographs was a single folder. The paper was thicker than normal, almost reinforced, as if someone wanted it to last longer than everything else. There was writing on the cover. 3 words, uneven, pressed hard. Do not reopen. Someone had reopened it anyway. Daniel Mercer had disappeared quietly. No headlines at first, no frantic press conferences, no breaking news. He was just another man driving home late, another name on a report, another car found abandoned on a rural road. Daniel was ordinary in the way investigators often found unsettling. No gambling debts, no secret relationships, no enemies. He worked long hours, called his fiancée every night, and followed routines so predictable that friends joked he could be tracked by the clock. That night, his routine broke. His car was found on the shoulder of a narrow highway, hazard lights blinking into the darkness. The engine was warm, the fuel tank was half full, the radio was still on, low static, humming like distant breath. There were no skid marks, no shattered glass, no blood. Just absence. The passenger door stood open, swaying gently in the wind, as if someone had stepped out for only a moment and never returned. Search teams scoured the surrounding woods. They found broken branches, indentations in the soil, signs of movement that led nowhere. Then they found a shoe. It was Daniel's. His fiancée confirmed it instantly. Same scuff near the heel, same faded stitching. The laces were still tied. The other shoe was never found. The case escalated faster than expected. Federal agents arrived before the local search concluded. No public explanation was given, but the shift in authority was obvious. Roads were closed, evidence was sealed, officers were told not to speak to the press. The disappearance stopped being a local mystery and became something else entirely. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation reviewed Daniel's background in microscopic detail. His job, his commute, every phone call, every letter, every receipt. Nothing explained why he vanished. Then something appeared. A cassette tape nailed to a tree not far from where the shoe had been found. No note, no fingerprints, just tape. When agents played it, no one spoke. There was only breathing, slow, steady, uncomfortably close to the microphone. In the background, faint but unmistakable, was the sound of wind moving through trees. The tape lasted exactly as long as the watch found in the photographs had been stopped. When the recording ended, no one in the room moved. The tape was logged as evidence, then it vanished. No record of its destruction, no transfer form, no explanation, just another silence layered over the first. Over the next year, the case unraveled instead of advancing. Witnesses recanted statements they had never officially given. Reports contradicted themselves. Entire sections of the file were missing, replaced with blacked-out pages stamped with authorization codes that led nowhere. One agent resigned without explanation. Another requested reassignment and left the country within weeks. A third died in what was officially ruled an accident. By the time Daniel Mercer was declared legally dead, the case file was thinner than it had been on day one. The forest where he disappeared was sold. The road was repaved. Time smoothed over the place where something had gone wrong, and the box was sealed. 40 years passed. Technology changed, methods evolved. Cold cases were reopened every day using DNA, databases, algorithms that could see patterns humans had missed. This case did not fit the system. When analysts finally digitized the remaining documents, something triggered an alert, a detail that should not match anything, but it did. The watch in the photograph. Its serial number appeared in another case, then another, then a third. Different years, different states, same stopped time. The system flagged it automatically. Human eyes followed, and someone, somewhere in the building, realized that the box had never been empty. It had been waiting. The alert was subtle. No flashing warning, no alarm, just a quiet line of text buried inside a system designed to notice things humans no longer could. A match. At first, no one trusted it. The database had been fed millions of records: missing persons, unidentified remains, stolen property, recovered evidence. It was built to find coincidences, but coincidences happened every day. Most of them meant nothing. This one felt different. The wristwatch from Daniel Mercer's case had surfaced again, not physically, digitally. Same manufacturer, same production batch, same micro-scratch pattern on the casing, same serial number. But it wasn't Daniel's watch. It belonged to a man who vanished in another state 7 years earlier, and his watch had also stopped at the exact same time. The analysts gathered around the screen in silence. The second case was from the late 1970s, a traveling salesman last seen near a rest stop just outside a small mountain town. His car was locked, his wallet untouched, his watch recovered miles away in a wooded area. The report called it coincidence. The third case erased that word entirely. Different decade, different region, different victim profile, same result. A watch. Stopped. Identical time. The system didn't care about superstition or fear. It only cared about patterns, and the pattern was undeniable. Someone had been collecting time. When the reopened file reached senior review, the reaction was immediate and uncomfortable. Several supervisors advised caution. One recommended shutting down the review entirely. Another suggested quietly removing the flagged data and marking it as a system error. No one explained why. That alone was enough to move the case forward. A small task force was formed, intentionally limited in size. No press, no public acknowledgement. The mandate was simple: determine whether the pattern was real, and if it was, find out why the original investigation had been buried. The name Daniel Mercer reappeared on screens for the first time in 4 decades. So did the name of the agency that had quietly stepped in back then, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Boxes were pulled from archives that hadn't been accessed since the Cold War. Microfilm reels were unspooled. Audio tapes were digitized with hands that moved slower than usual. The deeper investigators went, the stranger the omissions became. Entire witness lists were missing. Evidence logs jumped from one page to the next with no explanation. References were made to interviews that no longer existed. And then there were the handwritten margins. Old notes from agents long retired or long dead, written in ink that had faded but not disappeared. Do not connect. Handled above clearance. Stop asking. One note appeared more than once, written by different hands. The forest repeats. No one knew what that meant. Not yet. The task force began mapping the cases visually. Red pins for disappearances, blue for recovered objects, lines drawn between them like constellations. The shape that emerged was not random. The locations formed a corridor stretching across multiple states, cutting through rural highways, forests, and forgotten towns. Places where people passed through but rarely stayed. Places where disappearance could hide inside normality.
Each case shared common traits: late-night travel, isolated roads, vehicles left behind with no signs of struggle, and always something personal left behind: a watch, a ring, a wallet. Objects tied to time, identity, or memory. It was as if someone wanted proof that the person had been there, and then removed the person entirely. One analyst noticed something no one else had. The stopped time on the watches wasn't random. It aligned with a specific moment, a window of exactly 3 minutes. Every disappearance occurred during that window, across years, across states, across decades. That should have been impossible, unless the event wasn't bound to a place, unless it was bound to a moment. A name surfaced during the review. It wasn't listed as a suspect, a witness, or even an investigator. It appeared only in internal correspondence, redacted heavily, but visible enough. A consultant. Brought in briefly during the early stages of Daniel Mercer's disappearance, officially dismissed weeks later, unofficially referenced long after that. Every time the name appeared, the surrounding text was blacked out, except once. Consultant advises containment, not resolution. Containment of what? The task force requested clearance to view the unredacted files. The request was denied. They requested again, denied again. Then someone, somewhere in the system, approved partial access by mistake or on purpose. No one ever admitted to it. The unredacted pages changed everything. They described events that were never meant to be public, not just disappearances, but encounters. Drivers reporting something in the road that forced them to stop, a shape that didn't move like an animal, a sound that felt closer than it should have been. Several reports mentioned the same sensation: time slowing, not stopping completely, just enough to feel wrong, enough to notice, enough to remember. Those who experienced it but survived were dismissed as unreliable, fatigued, intoxicated, imaginative. Their statements were archived and forgotten. Except one, a man who had written only a single sentence in his report. It noticed me noticing it. The task force realized then why the case had been buried. It wasn't unsolved, it was unresolved on purpose. Someone had decided 40 years ago that knowing the truth was more dangerous than not knowing at all. And now that truth was resurfacing, because patterns do not forget. And whatever had been waiting in the forest had never stopped counting time.
He was not supposed to touch the file. Everyone in the building understood that without being told. Some cases carried a weight that went beyond procedure, beyond rank, beyond curiosity. This was one of them. Agent Thomas Hale knew that the moment he saw the access log. The file had been opened again. Not by accident, not by automation, by a person. Hale had spent most of his career working cases that no one wanted, failures, dead ends, investigations that never made it to court. He understood patterns, not just in data, but in behavior, and the pattern around this case was fear disguised as protocol. That was why he volunteered. Officially, Hale was assigned as an oversight reviewer. Unofficially, he was there to make sure nothing went wrong. He did the opposite. The first thing Hale noticed was what wasn't there. No final report. Most cold cases, even unsolved ones, ended with a summary, an explanation of what had been tried, what failed, and why the file was being closed. Daniel Mercer's case had no such ending. It simply stopped. The timeline cut off mid-paragraph, as if someone had lifted their pen and never put it back down. Hale read everything, slowly, repeatedly. The disappearances, the watches, the corridor of locations, the consultants whose name appeared and vanished like a ghost. Then he reached the internal memos. These weren't meant for investigators. They were meant for control. One memo stood out. It was short, clinical, almost bored in tone. Further pursuit increases exposure.
Risk assessment unacceptable. No explanation of exposure. No clarification of risk. Just a decision. Hale leaned back in his chair and understood something that unsettled him more than the content itself. The case wasn't closed because they failed. It was closed because they succeeded enough to see something they couldn't contain. Hale requested the consultant's full file. The system stalled, then returned an error message he had never seen before. Not access denied, not insufficient clearance, just one word: restricted. That was unusual. Hale had worked cases involving terrorism, espionage, and organized crime. Those files denied access with authority codes and warnings. This one didn't bother explaining. It simply refused. So Hale did what experienced agents sometimes did when systems stopped cooperating. He went looking for people. The consultant had never been officially employed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That was the first oddity. He had been requested, not hired, brought in temporarily, paid through a secondary channel that no longer existed. Hale traced the payment authorization to a retired administrator living quietly in Arizona. The administrator was reluctant to speak, not hostile, not defensive, just tired. When Hale mentioned Daniel Mercer's name, the man closed his eyes. "I told them not to keep records," he said softly. "I told them this would happen again." He refused to say more, but before Hale left, the man added one thing. He said it wasn't hunting people, he said. It was correcting something. Hale drove back in silence. Correcting what? That night, he reread the survivor reports, the drivers who stopped but lived, the ones dismissed as unreliable, the ones who mentioned time behaving strangely, like it was stretching or folding. One report described headlights illuminating something that did not reflect light properly. Another mentioned hearing their own breathing echo before they realized they were holding their breath. A third mentioned a sense of being evaluated, not threatened, measured. Hale began to understand why witnesses were ignored. Their experiences didn't fit crime. They fit something else. He broke the rule the next morning. Hale accessed a sealed audio archive that had not been linked to the case directly. It was buried under unrelated indexing codes, almost deliberately hidden. Inside were interviews, not transcripts, original recordings. One voice appeared again and again, the consultant. His tone was calm, almost reassuring. "This is not an entity in the way you're thinking," the voice said. "It does not pursue, it responds." In another recording, the voice continued, "When certain conditions align, the boundary thins. Most people pass through it without noticing. Some notice. Those are the ones at risk." Someone asked what happened to the people who vanished. There was a pause. Then the consultant answered, "They don't vanish. They are removed from sequence." Hale felt a chill he could not explain. Removed from sequence. Time again. He listened to every recording. The consultant had warned them, not about danger, about interference, about studying the phenomenon too closely. "You cannot observe this without becoming part of it," the voice said in one recording. "Awareness creates alignment." That sentence had been underlined in red ink in the margins of the file. By the end of the day, Hale knew two things. First, the reopen had already gone too far. Second, it was too late to stop. The system had flagged the pattern. Humans had followed. Attention had been focused. If the consultant was right, that alone might be enough. Hale closed the file and sat still for a long time. Then he noticed something on his desk. His watch. The second hand hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then continued ticking as normal. Hale did not report the incident. but he stopped wearing the watch after that day.
The forest had always been the constant. Highways shifted, towns expanded or disappeared, people moved on, but the wooded stretches along the corridor remained largely untouched, protected by distance, ownership disputes, and the quiet inconvenience of development. When Agent Hale finally stood at the edge of the original search area, the place felt smaller than the photographs suggested. That unsettled him more than he expected. Forests were supposed to feel vast, endless. This one felt contained, like a room with no walls but a clear boundary you could sense without seeing. The trees were old, older than the road, older than the first disappearance. Their trunks leaned slightly inward, not enough to be obvious, but enough to create a subtle impression of attention. Hale stepped inside. The sound changed immediately. Wind faded. Birds stopped calling. Even his footsteps felt muted, as if the ground absorbed sound instead of reflecting it. He had reviewed countless crime scenes. None had ever felt aware of him. This one did. The task force had avoided returning here. Officially, there was no reason to. The land had been searched exhaustively decades ago. Anything left behind would have decayed or been destroyed. Unofficially, several members admitted discomfort with the idea. Hale didn't tell them he felt it too. He followed the old path markers from archived photos, moving deeper until the light thinned and the air grew heavy. He stopped when he reached the spot where Daniel Mercer's shoe had been found. There was nothing remarkable about it now. No marker, no disturbance, just leaves, soil, roots. And yet, Hale's chest tightened. He felt late. The thought made no sense, but it wouldn't leave. He knelt and brushed aside the top layer of leaves. The ground beneath was different. Not disturbed, compressed, as if something had pressed down repeatedly over many years, shaping the earth in a way that rain and growth hadn't erased. Hale placed his palm on the soil. It was cold, too cold. Back at the temporary field office, Hale reviewed historical satellite imagery. He layered decades of data, adjusting opacity, searching for changes that shouldn't exist. What emerged was subtle. Seasonal variations, storm damage, human encroachment, and one anomaly. A faint circular distortion in vegetation growth centered exactly where the disappearances clustered. It didn't expand, it didn't shrink. It stayed the same size, year after year, as if something underneath refused to move. The consultant's voice echoed in Hale's memory. When certain conditions align, the boundary thins. The forest wasn't hiding evidence, it was marking a location. Hale requested environmental data from the period surrounding each disappearance, weather patterns, geomagnetic fluctuations, seismic micro-events. The correlations were immediate. Every case coincided with a brief spike in electromagnetic interference, too small to notice at the time, too consistent to ignore now. Something was happening there, not constantly, only when the conditions aligned: time, location, awareness. One surviving witness report stood out. A long-haul driver who had stopped near the corridor decades earlier. He hadn't vanished, he hadn't lost time, but he had felt something he couldn't explain. They weren't trees anymore, the man had said. They were outlines, like the idea of trees. Hale finally understood. The forest wasn't the source, it was the frame. Late that night, Hale returned alone. No equipment, no recording devices, no watch. He stepped into the circle. Nothing happened. At first. Then the air shifted. Not a sound, not a movement. A pressure, like standing underwater without being wet. Hale's thoughts slowed, stretching apart, each one taking effort to complete. He felt observed. Not by eyes, by alignment. The sensation was neither hostile nor welcoming. It was neutral.
evaluative. Then, without warning, it ended. Sound rushed back. Wind moved through branches. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Hale staggered backward out of the circle. He checked his phone. No signal, no timestamp, just a blank screen. When the device rebooted, the time had advanced by 3 minutes. Hale didn't report the incident. He didn't need to. The conclusion was unavoidable. The disappearances weren't acts of violence, they were acts of correction. Something intersected with human movement at specific moments. Most people passed through unaffected, some aligned too closely. Those people were removed, not killed, not taken, extracted, like errors in a sequence. The forest had never been hiding what happened. It had been holding the doorway open. And now, after 40 years of silence, attention had returned. Awareness had increased. Alignment was happening again. Hale knew the truth then. Reopening the case hadn't revealed the danger. It had recreated it.